today, but it's probably useful to hear some of these things and also hear the different things that you have to do. Now, one of the first things that I think is important is at least, and I'm not going to go over them completely here, but some of the things that you missed or may have missed in the first assignment. So keep in mind that one of the key things that we're trying to do here is to integrate the key words. And the key words are derived from the readings. So building that into your assignment in some way, whether it's this assignment or the previous assignment, was kind of a goal of them. And this meant that some people didn't do the semiotic analysis because they didn't really use those keywords that were related to it. And some essays were struggling with things like what was the target audience of the ad, you know, the gendered quality of the ad that you might have been looking at. And again, I guess the general criticism of some would be that they might have been a little bit too descriptive and not analytical enough. Now this assignment, Gallery 2, is different, but you can learn a lot from that. Don't forget that you still need to have references. You still need to reference most of what you're dealing with. But because it's a presentation of a sort of campaign, there are lots of kind of differences in focus. And some of these may or may not be as clear to you. But basically, Gallery 2 is 2 assignments in 1. So I'm going to pull this closer, and I know this will look like it's a ridiculous way of dealing with things because you can't really see that well, and I keep probably blowing it. But it's like 2 assignments. There's the campaign pitch, and there is the campaign summary analysis. I'll put that back over there so we can kind of see them both. And within those sorts of things, what you have to realize is that you have to choose your brief. And there are 8 briefs in the resources thing in the assessment area. You can't choose your own brand. You can't do anything like that. You have to work within one of those 8. Can't change that at all. Those are the 8 that you're working with. So I want to make that super clear that that's what you're doing. Here's the tip. Choose your brief, okay, which should be right about now, if not before, and see where it matches up with the material from the unit. Now, one of the things is your summary, campaign summary analysis, it might be good to write that first as opposed to last. Not that you won't change it, it's just it's going to help you in terms of the concentrations of things to work out where your material fits into your different categories of where the essay goes. So it'll also help to identify where your research fits into your campaign pitch itself. What have you done that might be useful? So it's just a tip. You may or may not find it as useful as I would find it, but it's kind of useful to do that even if it's a draft, and then you recraft it after you've done your campaign pitch material. Now, the first part, the campaign strategy, and this is meant to be a creative work, but it is a creative work a little bit differently than maybe some people are imagining. It's substantiated with a plan that connects to an industry. Okay, so you have to make points that are relating to the industry itself, because part of what we've analyzed is this industry and how it operates. So the best thing that you can do is don't overdo it in terms of this, but know the industry that it's connected to. Try as best you can to get parallel universes that are out there, because basically the campaign brief is trying to identify a universe of kind of possible advertising activity and getting you to focus on those sorts of things. Make claims, but make these claims so that they are kind of substantiated from some of the things that you've learned from the term. Don't presume that this essay is out in Never Never Land. It is connected fundamentally to the second half of this term. And here's a second tip. Identify when you use outside sources and references throughout the assignment, okay? These will probably be incredibly brief in PowerPoint, but they'll be there in the summary analysis section of section 2 of the entire thing. So don't presume that you should not be referential all the way through it. If you've used someone's thoughts, put it in a little bracket there, give the date or whatever in your PowerPoint, and go from there. All right. It's important that you establish a clear advertising objective built from the research and the target audience. Okay, so you have to work out how you're defining the target audience and how the kinds of understanding of that target audience would connect to the choices that you're going to make in terms of a media strategy, in terms of a creative strategy as well. And then show how it can be achieved through that creative strategy. Identify the objective right at the start, say where it comes from and the target audience that you think you're trying to hit, then explain it. Creatively, but explain it. So whatever you do in those early slides, this is the tip, make sure they resonate. In other words, there are terms that come up again, not identical in the way that they're organized, but it makes sense because the objective is matching the creative strategy. Okay? All right, let's go on to the next one. The creative strategy, you're not being tested on your capacity to draw or your capacity to make a logo or anything like that. So it can be as fancy or basic as you would like. Doesn't matter to me as long as there's clarity about what you're doing. And I can imagine what you might have thought it would be if you were a brilliant artist or something like that. But if you're good at that, play with it. And draw particularly from the weeks, from week 7. And this is Donald Parenti, which is Advertising Campaign and Strategy, a guide to the marketing communication plans. Actually, in those two things, in the readings attached to it, more or less says how you're supposed to do this campaign strategy. Now, some people have asked questions about research. I don't expect you to do massive research about how you know that this is the target audience or how you know that this is the media form. I want you to sort of say, our research has informed us that these are the best ways to get to these young people or old people or rich people or sad people or environmentally friendly people. All of them are potential target audiences. And you are jumping, in a sense, into it as if you've done that background research. But I still want you to identify that there are certain categories of research that you have identified from that research department that you didn't do that are really valuable in terms of establishing your creative campaign. So what that means is that in some senses, what you produce is not going to be completely accurate in the world. It's assuming all sorts of statistical research that already occurs about an audience and all those things, and assuming, but you have to say what your assumptions are, and then substantiate how you get to that audience that you've identified, and get and use the media that you identify. A lot of that is going to be contained in those readings. Less about storyboarding, and some will use storyboarding more or less, but the second one, the Donald Parenti one, you'll find a great deal there. And even the ad campaign material is useful too. All right. In the media strategy, what I want you to do is explain your emphasis. So if you're using mainly online sources, explain why, and attach it to the audience, attach it to how you draw their attention, how you pull them in, how you emotionally bond in some way to an audience and to produce this. So the best way to describe a media strategy from the aspect of this unit is to use your readings that we've done and get the keywords that are listed in that resources thing. There are a massive number of keywords to help phrase this sort of media strategy. And you'll find it. You'll find the terms and the ways to situate demographics and notions of the kind of self that you're trying to produce with one of those campaigns. All right. The campaign briefs. Now, this is the thing that I was amazed at how many people mentioned that they didn't see the campaign briefs. There's 8 of them, okay? And they're in that resources folder related to assessment. And you'll find them there and choose, and don't let it go much longer. You need to choose now and get going. October 5th is actually pretty close. Now, the campaign briefs, all of them, and deal with branding in some sort of way. And interestingly, the tip I'm going to give you here is almost all of what we did in the second half of the term deals with branding. Use that material. Again, use the key words to get to the point of what you're trying to do in that campaign brief. And make the products make sense in this world of branding and brand culture. and even self-branding if it makes sense. All right, the second part of your assignment is the campaign summary analysis. So as it says in this little slide here, your creative pitch will not have a great deal of time for critical reflection. Okay, so you're mapping it out, you're substantiating, but you're going very hard and you don't have a lot of words to work with for what you want to say. So this essay, the campaign summary analysis, is a chance to take a step back from it and argue about what fits into advertising and how consumer culture operates, how these things that you've talked about fit into it. Where does it operate? How does it occur? How does it function? How is an audience sort of being changed in the development of, say, new media? And how is that reflected potentially in how you've connected to them? But also, this is a place to integrate the kind of branding you've employed and how that matches or intersects with other aspects of branding. This is where you can compare to other campaigns a little bit more than you can definitely in the pitch stance. It also gives you a chance to talk about the new way that advertising reaches its audiences. Always within that, you are talking about your campaign summary analysis in terms of an analytical notion of where the pitch and brand is within this contemporary consumer culture, promotional culture, advertising culture. All right. Now, a couple of things that have come up from the discussion boards at different points, and I'm happy to try to answer them as best that I can. But listen to this so I don't have to keep answering the same questions. One is, remember the word totals are very accurate in the campaign brief. So when you're doing your voiceover, make sure your script is as close as you can, plus or minus sort of 5% to those word totals. And it's not that the overall word total totals 2,000. The campaign brief we recognize as creative activity and is equivalent to 1,250 words of the 2,000 word assignment. So the expectation is not that the word total will be 1,250. It's exactly allocated in terms of the different areas: the media strategy, audience target, all those sorts of things. The introduction elements are all listed there about how many words you can use. Don't put all those words on your screen, on your PowerPoint. Now, you have two opportunities, or two ways of doing it. There is in PowerPoint a way to audio narrate what you're doing, and I would almost recommend that. The other one is to do roughly what I'm doing here, but obviously better. Don't get your head so far away from it. But basically, you could do your pitch where your PowerPoint is there and you're describing it in a video form. Ultimately, I think what you should do is have your script also handed in some way, as either notes to the PowerPoint or as a separate sort of PDF. The campaign brief is likely to be campaign summary analysis. The second part is likely to be quite separate, almost like a separate essay that's handed in. But they will be there, and you have to make sure that all your elements are there. As I say, it'd be useful to have those sorts of things. In other words, a text that that literally has everything that you said or were supposed to say in the video, or whatever way that you are presenting. So it's a pretty fascinating assignment. It's really interesting, it's intriguing, but give yourself time to do this. This is not going to be done overnight. Remember, you have 8 possibilities, and I should probably know by now what are those possibilities. I would contribute to the last discussion board this week and next week. Next week will be literally about everything. We do have a discussion board also that does what you want to ask the people who teach this unit. That's fine too. This week, just tell me what you're doing and why you're doing it, and maybe how it intersects with what we've talked about in terms of even the notion of the consumer this week. All right, good luck. I'm going to sign off now, check one more screen, and say October 5th. Remember, October 5th is when it is due. And there we go, I believe Monday, right? And remember, those 5% penalties never disappear. They are always valid, and any portion of a day late